So we're here today to discuss Peardeck, right? I'm like so into app smashing, so you'll see that some of the activities I've actually smashed it with Flipgrid. So I'm gonna take you guys through how you can simply make one of your slides or your Google Slideshows a Peardeck activity for your students. But also in between, I'll be doing some activities for you. After we're done, we're actually gonna curate everything and put it into Wakelet. But I don't know if you've heard earlier from Gabe or you've seen any of my posts. Of course, I reached out to Peardeck. So we have 5 Peardeck swag packages to give out. So be on the lookout for that at the end. I don't know what it is. In the past, it's been like premium access and shirts and even like these stress balls, right? That's Pears. They was just like, Yuritsa, we're gonna hook them up. And me and Gabe was like, okay. So I don't know if you guys are ready, but I think I'm ready. Gabe. All right, so I'll share my screen with you guys. All right. So at this point, you guys should be able to see my Google Slideshow, right? And it's usually what most of us use, even if you're using PowerPoint. So what I did was I added on Peardeck. So if you look above where it says background, right, I added Peardeck. This is very simple when you add it on as an add-on, because what that does then, it gives me the choice to actually use Peardeck. Before you start a lesson, my advice is to take a look at their template libraries. I've used some, especially for stress checks, right? So especially now, SEL is this huge thing. We want to know not only how the students are feeling, but this is a great way to add multiple choice questions to your slides. And at the end, I'll show you guys how you can check it and actually print it out as a spreadsheet. That way, you don't really have to grade in real time. If you're like me, you don't really grade directly after the assignment, right? Sometimes we grade like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe the day or the week after. So this is cool. And a lot of people, you know, before you guys came on, me and Gabe was talking about the similarities between Nearpod and Peardeck. And what I love about Peardeck is that it actually saves students' responses in real time. So you never have to really worry about if a student's response is not saved. So this is typically where I would start. I usually create my slideshow, and you guys are about to see this anyway because I'm gonna show it to you guys and share it. And then I usually pick the kinds of questions. For today's activity, I wanted to app smash it with Flipgrid, but I also wanted you guys to see a lot of what I've used in the past with my students, especially around SEL or asking them just, how's your day going? So I'm going to pretend to choose start lesson. I actually started it already. So let me go to my deck. If your cell phone is out or your computer, you can go to peardeck.com and the join code is FIYZU. I'll actually add that into the chat. Well, without the period. Now, with Peardeck, and maybe you guys can respond to this in the chat, how many of you guys have used Peardeck for synchronous teaching? So let me actually go back to seeing your faces. Used it, but no, not a pro, okay. Not yet, used it, but not a pro. All right, so today, when you guys join, this will be synchronous teaching, right? It's going to be student paced. And this is typically how I use it with my students, more because it lets me know what students actually need my assistance and what students don't. But it also allows the teacher to put in an extra assignment if a kid finishes too quick. And that's what I'm good for. I'm good for just saying, okay, you finished and you completed my 3 easy tasks. Let me give you something else at the end. Is everyone able to log in? I see 11 people so far. So I'm showing my screen with you guys. You guys have the choice to either show your dashboard or not. I'm just showing it for the purposes of today's workshop. And also know that if you choose student pace, you can still change it to real time. So I'll give everyone about 2 more minutes to log on, and then I'll begin. So this is the join code. It's all right if it's loading slow. We have all day, because whatever I can't answer today, you guys can DM me, you can email me, and I'll help you out. Karen, I see that you said that you guys just got premium. I know, and there's also a lot of teachers in my school who they don't have premium yet. Our school didn't fully get it. It's more like they were trying to figure out if I really liked it and if it really works. And now as a school, we're going to push for it. And then also one of my APs, he fell in love with it already from one of our workshops. So he's definitely going to use it in mathematics. Okay, Angela, premium today. All right, so we got a lot of premium folks here. Okay. All right. So you should be able to start, right? So I don't know if you can see this, but I actually added my dashboard to my cell phone. For those of you who are teaching virtually or you're in the classroom, you can open it on your iPad. For the purposes of this workshop, I want to use my cell phone. And what that does is it allows me to not only control the slides from my phone, for those of you who like to walk around, right? I'm changing it. But now I can also see where everyone is at. So I know there's 17 students right now, or 17 of you guys on the first slide, but then I have some people who already moved on, right? This is what's so cool about student pace. Some students may not want to wait for you, or you may take too long explaining the first slide, so students are moving on, and that's okay. So I'm going to move on. So if you look at the second slide, it's asking you guys to do a stress check. And what you would do is you would drag your icon. So green, meaning you're in a great space or a good space and you can focus today. The midsection, something is bothering you. And red just means you're telling me, Yuritsa, I'm listening, but I'm really not. I'm emotional today, so you may have to give me another workshop tomorrow. And I'm saying, okay, that is totally fine. What you should be able to notice is you can't see anyone else's name. As a teacher, you can change that, but also you can see it in your dashboard. That is perfect, especially for those of us who love to use our smart boards and love to project things. You control what other kids see. And remember, I said this is student pace, but you could also, if you look down at the bottom of the screen on the right-hand side, not close to end, but you could stop student pace and literally go to real time, right? So you can literally stop this and go into teacher mode, and you can now see what students are on which slides and bring everyone back. So I want to do introductions because I don't know any of you guys, well, besides my PLN. And like I said, this is interactive. So I'm going to move on to the second slide, the third slide. And I want to do introductions. If you know me, you know I had to put Flipgrid into this. If you have the Flipgrid app, you can literally just scan the QR code. It's going to take you to today's introductions. If not, you can put in the code, or actually I can, let me see if it allowed me to. I don't want to click on it. It's not allowing me to. You guys should be able to click on the hyperlink from your screen as well. So I gave you 3 choices, which is perfect for your student learners. Remember, not every student has a device and a cell phone. Not every student is going to think to just, scan. So give students choices. At this point, you should be at your Flipgrid introduction. I'm going to give everyone about 2 minutes, which means I'm going to turn the music back on. I need to learn something about you before I move on to the rest of my activities. Able to see who had already moved on past introductions. I'm just showing you guys exactly what are some ways that you could get students started, right? So I'm going to move on to the next slide. And this is usually what I do for my students. I want students to know exactly what is it that I expect them to do for the day. And because we're virtual learning, or some of you guys might be face-to-face, I'll be back face-to-face next week. I want students to be able to complete tasks and not feel like they're so surprised at what I'm asking them to do. So if you have 3 activities, 5 activities throughout the day, you may want to give students a heads up because it makes them feel a little bit more comfortable. So this is typically what a kid might see. I teach overage undercredited students. They're 16 to 21. And so for me, I'd rather give you a heads up so we have a clear understanding of what my expectations are. If you noticed, the presentation for today said Back to the Future. That is my theme for this class, period. It would be Back to the Future. I know some of you mentioned that you clicked the YouTube link at the bottom. Yes, that is one of my hooks. I want the kids, yes, it was the first slide. I'll go back to it if you didn't notice it. So at the bottom where it says student browse YouTube, you guys see it? It's literally a YouTube link. And what I did was I cut the time to 3 minutes, and it's the introduction to the Back to the Future movie. And that was just my way of getting kids a little excited about this, right? Because I'm going to ask kids a specific question, and in their question, I want them to be able to let me know what comes to mind when you think of the concept Back to the Future. Now, I had already showed them the YouTube link, but like most of us, probably didn't pay attention to it. And so if the kids actually scan the QR, it comes up as a Flipgrid AR video. So this is another hook that I have. But now I need kids to let me know what comes to mind when you think of Back to the Future. So I'll give you guys about 2 minutes to play around with that, and also for me to wait for some responses. So remember, I'm showing you guys everything because of the presentation. As a teacher, you can turn this off so that even names don't show up. Okay, someone's dad's favorite movie. The mall parking lot was filmed 5 minutes away. Okay. So you get to see what your students know. I didn't get into any historical topics yet. I didn't tell them to think about how the 1920s is going to be linked to the 2020s. All I wanted to know was, what was their concept of Back to the Future? If you scanned the QR code, you should have been able to see a lot of different faces. Some were students, some were parents, and then it was me. This was an assignment that I created with parents to actually increase parent engagement. And so that's one of my next workshops on September 19th. How can you use Flipgrid to increase parent engagement? Something as simple as creating a Flipgrid shorts or QR. That way students see not only their classmates, but their parents are saying, welcome back to the future. So someone's husband's favorite movie, the ride at Universal Studios, Michael J. Fox. A lot of people remember Michael J. Fox. You'll see that somebody deleted their response. So I know in my mind, if at the end of this, when I change the session and it's no longer live, I may want to go back to that student and ask, well, did you have difficulties? Guys, this is your assessment. This tells you, should I move on? Should I stay on this question? Should I turn off student pace and now go into real-time teaching? So I'll give you guys Einstein talk. So I'll give you guys about 30 seconds and then I'll move on and I'll actually make the connection with you guys as to why I began with this. And if you have any questions, I'm going to go to the chat now. That way I can answer in between. I filmed my video twice. Am I just losing it? Sorry. I love the comment. I want to marry it. 6-year-old use Flipgrid for the first time to speak. It's personal easy. To create Peardeck, we have the activities for the whole week and students finish at their own pace. Yes, Becky, you can. But what I would say is you may not want, and I'll share your question. Becky had asked if she could create a Peardeck for the entire week and students just finish it at their own pace. What I would say is you guys may want to be careful with how many slides students are able to see, right? Because if I'm a student and I see 30 slides, guess what? I'm tapping out on the first 2. So you may want to be careful with that. But the good thing about Peardeck is, remember, you're literally importing your Google Slideshow. So what I would do is I would import it the first way. And then as I'm adding on slides, then I'll just literally just go back to present mode or present session again. You decide how many slides you want students to see. I know if I was a student, 25 slides, because I'm thinking of the week, would probably scare me off. So we just have to think about things like that. Okay, so I'm gonna move on. Let me move myself off this screen. We have 21 responses. It's perfect. You can change the layout if you like. But now for the second activity, I'm now wanting students to use their prior knowledge and make connections. I want students to think about the 1920s. At this point already during my lesson, I would have already introduced my students to the historical topics of the 1920s. But what I really want to get out of this is change in continuity. So how have things changed? How have they remained the same? You know, what impacts come to mind when you think of Black, Indigenous, and people of color and their experiences in the 1920s. So I may have begun this activity with it being so fun for the students, but now I need to make that connection. Yes, yes. And I'm seeing in responses. I'm starring some answers. As students are doing this, you can reply, you can leave feedback, right? So I totally agree, which that may not be, you know, the feedback that you leave, but you can now use this as an opportunity and start to pick students' brains. Maybe the guy from the taxi was not a good enough answer for you. So you may want to say, well, can you elaborate? What about the guy from the taxi? And send the feedback, and students will now be able to see that feedback and have one-on-one conversations with you without the rest of the class seeing it. When we began, I discussed with you guys the fact that Peardeck allows you to add some of their slides in. So the next slide that I have was actually created by Peardeck. And the great thing about Peardeck is you're able to edit every pre-made slide. So I'll go on, or I'll move on to the next. And this was me asking students to make that connection, right? So we discussed, what does it mean? Or what do you think about with the terms Back to the Future? Then I asked students to think about the impact the 1920s had on people of color, Indigenous, Black people. And now I'm saying, let's make a connection. But I'm not asking students to write. You can write, you can draw, but I need you to make that connection within your box. So for the sake of time, and because I want to give you guys a chance to like ask questions, I'm just going to move on from the slide. Someone had asked earlier, you know, if you had a chance, you could just put in every assignment for the week. What I've learned to do is I would give kids a slide that looks like this. So you finished early, you can move on to the time capsule assignment. So now I'm not expecting every kid to move on early, but I designed these in a way where it gives kids time to go back. I created a time capsule assignment. It still has to do with going back to the future or moving forward ahead, right? And it's a Flipgrid activity. So what the kids would do is they'll scan the QR code, and now it's asking, if you can choose an item to share with the future, what would it be? What I love about this is our students are experiencing a pandemic. Our students and in most cases, our students have experienced inequities their entire lives, but now it's just like smack dead in front of them. So you get to now see how your students are feeling. You get to see what is it they would share. And think about it this way, they're sharing it with you. You're the teacher. So this is another crucial aspect of SEL. You're getting to understand not only how your students feel, how they took in the assignment, but also what are they finding that's so important that they would want you and their classmates to know. And then I would end with another Peardeck slide, which literally asks students, is this hard? Was it way too hard? Was it just right? Or was it too easy? So I'm going to be honest, whenever I see that kids put that it's too easy, I usually in the next week put a very difficult assignment. But it's not because, you know, you want to hurt kids. It's more about, I need to challenge that student a little bit more. And my students are pretty honest. If it was boring, they'll probably just say, Miss, it was boring. But you want students to be able to understand it. And like I said, you're creating a Google Slideshow. You already know what is it that you want to teach students. You're now just using Peardeck as a way to assess student understanding. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a bit so that I can ask questions. Well, you guys can ask questions, and then I'll share the screen according to whatever else questions you guys may have in regards to looking at the screen. So let me get out of here. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces. Hi, guys. Okay. You guys can unmute if you have a question. I told you guys this is an interactive workshop. There are no such things as dumb questions. We are all here to learn. And I know I wasn't perfect, so where are the questions?
Hey,
So
I have a question. If you can go first, Abby.
You probably already said this, but are you going to link your presentation to, maybe it's already in there because I joined late, but it's so good.
So I'm actually, yes, after this, we'll give you guys a Wakelet link, and I'll also be presenting the 5 winners of the Peardeck swag kits. So I'll do all in just, you know, one tweet, and then I'll retweet it again tomorrow just in case. And then for those of you who you don't have Twitter, I'll just give Gabe the information. That way, if you are a winner and you don't have Twitter, you can email me your address to pass it along to Peardeck. Yep.
Hey, I have a question. I filmed my video twice, and I'm so proud of myself because, you know, Tech and Tracy are like not synonymous, but it wouldn't go through. So I don't know what I did wrong. It was like giving me all these options to edit and add icons, but it kept erasing. And so I saved it and I sent it to you as proof that I did actually film it and I was successful on that part. But do you have any like troubleshooting ideas, especially if people are doing this in their classroom and the kids might have the same like Tech Tracy issues?
So yours, I believe yours went through. No, I think we have 2 Tracys on here.
Yes.
Yeah, we have 2 Tracys. So what I would say is 2 things. With technology, there's always uncertainty, right? So I would say to prepare for tech always messing up. And in my mind, that's how I've always thought about it, because I don't even have Windows in my classroom. So I think about connection and network errors. But also, a few weeks back, Flipgrid just did updates. And so if you've been noticing online, they've been just, trying to explain to a lot of the users that it's been a lot of glitches. And so what I would say is, and especially I know with my students, they would probably get frustrated after the first video not uploading. What I would do is just, say, hey, I know that you had problems with it. Either you can email it to me or we can try this on a later date. Just because I know there's been a lot of updates to Flipgrid, that's something that I would tell the students. But also with technology, we know technology messes up. Especially in times we have like our best lessons, I've gotten observed before and like my screen was just like black. And I was just like, okay, students, is everyone still on their iPads? Okay, proceed. And even, I don't know if you guys have ever had Promethean tables. You've heard of Promethean boards before, right? So I have a Promethean table in my class, which is literally like the board, but it's a table and it's like a huge tablet. And sometimes that even just freezes. But I had the table because it's so cool to have the kids do Kahoot using a table. I'll leave a group on, one side of the classroom while I'm teaching the other group. So it's like a cool way to differentiate. But yes, I would just, due to all the updates and the glitches, I would most likely tell students, I understand, I'm with you. I know you did it, because that's what kids want to hear as well. I know you did it. You could just send it to me at a later date. And Tracy, I know.
Okay, thanks.
I know you did.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the benefit of the doubt that it's a tech problem and not a Tracy problem. So
I always blame tech. I always blame, when in doubt, just blame tech. And if you're getting observed, blame tech. Blame the tech. Anyone else have a question? Now, no questions. Is that a good thing or?
I'm sorry. This is Jamie. I love this. Do you lead PDs often? Because I love to attend more.
Yes. So I have an organization, is a nonprofit. I'll put the website in the chat. I always have free PD. So like the next one is coming up is it was a series of 3. We did student engagement, we did SEL, and now the last one is going to be parent engagement. But then on September 30th, I'm doing another SEL using Peardeck. So that's coming up, and then I have a few workshops in October coming up. So yes, I'll give you guys the website. I'm always running PDs. They're always free. And yeah, just a whole bunch of fun, just like this all the time. And always swag giveaways. So I had to put that out there.
I have a question. I saw somebody was talking about a Peardeck slide where you can embed websites. I'm looking to embed like a timer for like a brain break. Is there a Peardeck slide that is best suited for that? And then which Peardeck slide type did you do the thing where you had all the Flipgrid options? So what I usually do is I usually create all of my slideshows. I created on Google Slide. And what I'll do is I'll go through every slide and I'll ask myself, does every kid get this? And usually my answer is no to myself. Like somebody's gonna have an issue, someone's gonna have a problem, or someone's gonna skip the slide. Just like the first slide, some of you didn't notice that there was a YouTube video attached to it, right? And so what I usually do is then I'll go in and I'll share my screen. That way you guys can see it a bit better. Okay. So then I'll go to Peardeck, and I usually go through every single slide. So some of you probably noticed some of my slides already had audio, like this one. If you can see, it says audio included, and that's my voice giving students examples. And so when I went over my slides, I realized, okay, Yuritsa, what are gonna be some issues that students might have? What are some problems? What are some questions? And so I created an audio, and you can add that to any slide by just clicking add audio, and you record your voice. For other content, you can go to their template library, and they have some for every part of the lesson. Let me see. You have beginning,
which is the stress check one that you guys started off with. They have some with that, during, and then end. Even your end or exit tickets, they have a ton. With whichever one you choose, literally you can change it according to what you like. So it's the way I see it is, it's not so much of just because you add it, that's how you have to use it. Some people tend to use it just how it is. I change it. I'm so into culturally responsive teaching, and sometimes my students may not want to see something that says circle how you were feeling. Maybe I may say something like, what type of day you had today, instead of what kind of day did you have today. I always try to change the verbiage or the language according to how my students are best going to understand it. You had a question about the timer. I've never used timers on here because literally when I started using Peardeck, it was through virtual learning, and I felt like my students were already stressed out. I'm going back face to face next week, and my board, I have a Promethean board, it already has a timer on it. So I'll just be using that. I can see, let me see if there's something on here. I've never used a timer on here before. So you just gave me a task for tonight. That's not it. So I'll look into that and I'll actually get back to you on that one. But I always usually put my own timer on my board. And because of virtual learning, I never time my students.
Okay, just checking. It's not a huge thing.
Well, now you gave me a mission. Now I'm going to, now I have to find out. I'm not going to want to go to sleep now. Anyone else?
Okay, there's a question from the audience. Did you go over how to make your presentation before they got here?
So my presentation, I made my presentation last night just because I knew that I was going to actually present. But if you guys want, so I could do something real simple. So this is like a blank canvas. You guys can still see this? So say for instance, this was my presentation. You would then click on the add-on, which is Peardeck. I'm already signed on to my Gmail. My computer stays signed into Gmail. My Peardeck is linked to my Gmail. So once you add Peardeck as an add-on, you can literally just do whatever you want with it in regards to your slideshow. So this is my presentation, and I want a template for during my lesson. True or false, drag the dots. How about agree, disagree? It would add it as a different slide. You can change this. So I know, especially those of you who are history teachers, you love giving argumentative questions. Those of you, even math, you can change this to, is this problem correct, and have an equation there. When I'm done, like say for instance, this is my entire slide, I will click on start lesson. It would then ask me whether I needed to be student paced or instructor paced. Student paced is what we were just doing, where literally I was able to see that you guys were on the last slide or the first slide. With instructor paced, it's literally me teaching you guys the lesson and going through each slide. So you wouldn't be able to move on a slideshow if it's instructor paced. So I'm just going to choose student paced activity. It'll open it up in Peardeck. It gives you this warning, right, for you not to show the dashboard because the dashboard shows answers. You can share this to your Google Classroom. You can give kids the join code, but this is typically what you would see after your presentation. Now, I'm just gonna go to the regular website. That way you guys can see how this looks. So this is typically what you see when you sign on to Peardeck. If you go to sessions, this will be every session that you've imported. So from me importing the same Back to Future lesson last night to me doing it again today to make sure that everything worked, to the unnamed lesson that we just did with the 2 slides. Now, the good thing about this is you can either turn off the student pace. Obviously, we would name the session, but you can archive it if you don't want students to be able to see it again. With it being live, the same way I just selected to represent this, you can do it again and again and again. A student is able to go back into the session and actually complete the tasks. Now, if you go into your profile, because I believe this is the part that educators really love about Peardeck, if you go into your settings, you decide what kind of classroom climate you want. So I have it on mood and feedback, which means most of the templates that they give me for the beginning would be on SEL, and also for me to be able to respond. You can change that where it only focuses on one each. I always leave it on mood and feedback, but my favorite part is takeaways. So I know prior to today's workshop, someone had asked Gabe, like, you know, how do you have time to grade all of this? Or, you know, do you go back and you look at it in real time? My takeaways is always on, and literally you can go back to the session and you can print out whatever it is that the kids have done. So I like the idea of printing it out and allowing students to basically see their own work. So let me go back to Back to the Future. You can view it in the Google Drive. You can restart the lesson. We can end it. If you guys end it, students will not have access to it anymore. But the good thing about ending a session is that once it's closed, you can export it to a spreadsheet. So every answer, especially for those of you who love giving students multiple choice questions, now in that spreadsheet, it will have the student responses along with their names and their emails. With takeaways, as you can see, it said premium. Only with the premium accounts can you actually have takeaways on. So this is loading. I can't see the questions yet, so let me go into the chat as that loads. Yes, Jacqueline, you can share the slideshow with another teacher. Let me see. Can work great with anticipation guides, blah, blah, blah. So what I love about Peardeck is the fact that if you know your students, it allows you to really prepare for them in a way that you probably wouldn't have with this platform. I'm able to think about my students every single time I create something. And, you know, as educators, we may think we have the best lesson ever, but when you review it, some of our students are looking at you the way some of you guys are looking at me, like it's not a big deal. So using Peardeck allows you to go through each slide and reflect on it, but also think about every student in your classroom. I know you guys wanted to see the takeaway, but it's still loading. Let me see if it's done loading. That way you guys can see exactly what it looks like. I archived my classes, so. Yes, I archived my classes just in case you guys are looking at me like that. And you literally can create an assignment from that, from your takeaways. So I like it. Soon, because I know Gabe likes Nearpod, I'll do a session on how to use Nearpod for gallery walk. I've done that this year with students. And you know, we love gallery walks. And so I figured out a way to do a gallery walk with Nearpod and Flipgrid and actually have students interact with mixtapes while also giving each other feedback using Nearpod. Yeah. Let me see if there's any other questions before we leave. Can you make an existing PowerPoint in Peardeck? Yes, you can. So what I like to do is our students, we go back next week. Our students now, as of yesterday, will begin on the 21st. So what I'll be doing next week is literally preparing for my students to come in, which means most of the slideshows that I create would technically be old by the time students get there on the 21st. Once you create it, you can then import it onto Peardeck. It's not a problem how old it is. You can use something from last year. I did a lot of like interactive notebook activities. So a lot of what I gave students access to in my flipped classroom last year were all PowerPoints. For some of my students in my US 2 class or my AP classes, I'm literally just gonna edit those PowerPoints so that I can have more interactive activities, and then I'm uploading it on Peardeck. So with Peardeck, in most of my presentations, when I've had conversations with people, I've seen mostly middle school and high school teachers use Peardeck. And well, one of my friends, she's going to use it with college courses and parents. I believe that even in elementary school, you can use it because the assignments is so easy, or the slideshows, they're interactive. You can have students draw, you can have them drag the circle, you can have them drag the line. And so for me, elementary school would be the place that I would definitely have kids use it, because they express themselves totally different than a lot of the high schoolers and college students might. I teach fourth, and I definitely, yes, I would use it. I would use it, especially for the slideshow where I had the kids compare, when they had to actually do the comparison of the 1920s and 2020. You can have, you know, students of all ages just draw, or even with moods. How are you today? You may see a smiley face, you may see a frown, you may see a sad face. And so it's very interactive. That's what I really like about Peardeck. It's interactive. And like, I started you guys off with a hook. The kids probably didn't know that I was going to bring in the 1920s. You probably didn't think that I would ask you a historical question, but because you saw the YouTube video and you saw the AR, you were already hooked onto what the lesson was. You probably thought it was going to be just about the movie, but sorry, it wasn't. My kids are third, fourth grade, and both teachers. Yep. Oh, for sure. And I put Bitmojis on everything. I think my kids are just like, what's wrong with this lady? It is the only way I can express myself when I can't see them. So what's really good about it too, especially for those of you using Google Classroom, you know, usually you create an assignment and you share, or you make a copy for each student and you're giving feedback. You can copy and paste the Bitmoji onto that Google Doc, and they'll be able to see your Bitmoji. So sometimes if you want to say like excellent, because the Bitmoji is an add-on, you can type in the word excellent or awesome, or like in my case, sometimes I put that's dope, and you pick out what the Bitmoji should look like and you put it on the paper, and the kids get to see it. So can you be on Google Meet with them while going through? Yes. So when I did Peardeck this year, we only used Google Meets. My school had only used Google Meets. We're actually going to use Google Meets again next week. I'm playing more with Microsoft, so I'll be using both with my students. That way in January, we transition to Microsoft, my students will already have a feel for using Teams. But all I've used since March was Google Meets. Definitely Google Meets. I'm guessing that's all the questions. So thank you guys. I know I speak fast. I was just trying to like be considerate of everyone's time, because usually I say 1 hour for a workshop. And a lot of you know, especially those of you who are my PLN, it goes from 1 hour to like 3 or 4, because like we have too much fun.
You do have another question. Can you switch back and forth between student-centered or student-paced and live?
Yes. So so at the bottom of the slideshow, say for instance, I start off with student paced. At the bottom, you can turn off student pace. But if you click on like the 3 dots, you're the one responsible for changing that mode. So if you realize there were some students who, for some reason, they're still on the second slide or did not answer a do now or whatever it was that you used for your hook, you can turn it off, go into teacher pace mode, and then turn it back on if you'd like. So you're the one that's, well, not responsible for controlling, but you are the one controlling all of it. Yes, guys, play around with it. Play around with it. Play around with it. By no means do I work for Peardeck. I'm just here to just like show you guys how much fun you can have with some of these platforms. And because I know some of our schools suck at giving us advice. So that's what me and Gabe are here for. Whatever questions you have, if you find me on Twitter and you DM me because you're stuck with something, I'm here. If I don't know the answer, I'll Google it. Like after this, I need to find out how to put like the timer on there. Thank you, guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for everyone for participating. We're going to post this on our YouTube channel. In addition, the Wakelet, and Yuritz is going to tag the 5 people that are going to that win. And if you're not on Twitter, I'll share that information on our Social Studies Network on Facebook page, as well as a couple other Facebook groups.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.